Ever get that feeling like you're looking back at history and just thinking, man, what if things had gone just a little bit different?
Oh, absolutely. I think anyone who spends any time thinking about history has those moments, right?
Totally, like those little hinge points where things could have gone one way or the other, and it makes you wonder, what kind of world we'd be living in now.
Yeah, the butterfly effect of history, right? One little flap of the wings.
Exactly. So that's kind of the headspace we're in for this deep dive because we're looking at Nat Turner's rebellion back in 1831, and you sent over some seriously interesting analysis about it.
It's a fascinating one to consider for exactly that reason, the what ifs.
I mean, obviously a hugely significant event, even though it ultimately didn't succeed. But it was this, really powerful uprising against slavery down in Southampton County, Virginia.
Yeah, and it's such a stark reminder of the brutality of that system and the incredible courage of those who resist it.
For sure. And even though it was contained to that one area and put down violently, it really does make you think about, like, what could have been different? What if it had turned into something much bigger?
Right. And that's what's so intriguing about the analysis you shared. It really delves into those alternate possibilities.
Yeah, it's not about rewriting history exactly, but more like trying to understand the key things that might have tipped the scales?
Like a historical thought experiment.
Exactly. What would it have taken for Turner's uprising to turn into this widespread, lasting movement against slavery? That's our mission for this deep dive.
Love it. Let's get into it.
So the analysis you sent, it starts by pointing out just how small Turner's group was at the beginning, something like 70 people, which, I mean,
It's a tiny force to try and take on, well, the entire system of slavery.
right. It seems pretty clear that to have any real shot at success on a larger scale, they would have needed way more people.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting thinking about Turner himself. I mean, he was a preacher, right? So we had this platform, this way of reaching people.
Makes you wonder how he might have used that position, more strategically.
Imagine, instead of a more or less spontaneous uprising, what if he had spent years, maybe even decades, building up a secret network of supporters?
Like a slow burn, under the radar kind of thing?
Exactly. Maybe using those religious gatherings, not just for preaching, but for quietly spreading his message and organizing.
Covert meetings, coded messages.
Right. Imagine that happening on plantations across multiple counties, slowly building up momentum. That could have been a game changer right there, just in terms of sheer numbers.
For sure. And then there's the question of the free black communities in the South at that time. I mean, they weren't enslaved, but a lot of them must have been deeply sympathetic to the cause.
I think that's one of the really crucial points the analysis brings up. If Turner had been able to establish contact with those communities, that could have been huge.
I mean, think about it. They could have been a source of manpower, but also resources, information.
Things that enslaved people just didn't have access to.
Right. Enslaved people, they couldn't just travel around freely.
Nope, but free black individuals could, and they could spread messages, gather intelligence, even help move supplies.
Makes you wonder, what kind of networks already existed within those communities.
Exactly. It's like tapping into this whole other layer of the resistance movement that was already there, just waiting to be connected.
Okay, so we're looking at a potentially much larger force now. But then there's the issue of weapons. The actual rebellion, it was mostly farm tools they were using.
Not exactly ideal when you're going up against, an army with guns.
No kidding. The analysis really hammers home the point that better weapons would have been essential. But how could they have actually gotten those? I mean,
Well, the analysis suggests that they needed to be way more proactive and a lot more strategic about it. Instead of just grabbing whatever was nearby when things kicked off, what if they had spent time raiding plantation armories?
maybe doing it in small groups over time so it wouldn't be as obvious.
Right, or even setting up secret hiding places for weapons beforehand. I mean, think about it. If they could have gotten their hands on even a few firearms,
That would have changed things considerably.
at least in those first crucial moments, it's the difference between a desperate fight and a real chance at taking control.
Absolutely, but you can't have a coordinated rebellion, especially one that's happening across multiple places, without solid communication.
You're telling me. I mean, you need to be able to get messages back and forth, coordinate your movement.
The analysis points out that that was a major weak point in the actual rebellion, the lack of good communication.
No kidding. They had the element of surprise, that's for sure. But once the authorities caught on,
It was pretty much over.
right, because they couldn't coordinate effectively. So imagine if they had set up systems for secret messages.
Like what? Using coded language in their songs.
Could have worked. Or maybe they had trusted messengers who could move between plantations without raising suspicion.
Like an underground railroad, but for information instead of people.
Exactly. That kind of network could have been huge, both for preventing leaks and for coordinating attacks. Think about it, prearranged signals, secret meeting points.
That's getting into some serious spycraft.
You know it.
Okay, so in this hypothetical scenario, we've got a bigger rebellion, it's better armed, and it can communicate. That's a good start.
It's addressing some of those initial weaknesses for sure.
But the analysis you sent, it also goes deeper into the actual planning and strategy of the rebellion, which, looking back seems to have been pretty limited.
Yeah, and that's where those what-ifs get really juicy. I mean, the fact that the actual rebellion stayed pretty much confined to just that one county in Virginia.
Made it way easier to contain.
Right, it allowed the local authorities to focus all their resources there, and then eventually the state and federal forces got involved.
And it was pretty much game over.
Right. So the analysis throws out this idea. What if there had been coordinated uprisings happening at the same time across a much wider area?
Like hitting multiple counties at once.
More than that, imagine it spreading to neighboring states like North Carolina. You'd have chaos on a whole different level.
Would have been terrifying for the slave owners, that's for sure.
No doubt. But strategically, it would have been way more effective for the rebels. I mean, think about the strain it would have put on the Southern militias.
Trying to fight on multiple fronts like that.
Exactly. They would have been totally stretched thin. It wouldn't be easy, of course, but it would have bought the rebellion valuable time.
Time to do what? Recruit more people.
Potentially, yeah. But also to solidify their position and maybe even, establish some kind of control over a larger area.
Interesting. And speaking of strategy, the analysis also mentions something else, the importance of targeting infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Think about it. If they could have taken out things like telegraph lines and roads.
Which were already in use back then, right?
Definitely. And they were essential for communication and transportation, especially for the authorities.
So disrupting those would have been like...
Throwing a major wrench in the works. Cutting telegraph lines would have slowed down the spread of information about the uprising.
And blocking roads would have made it way harder for the troops to get where they needed to go.
Exactly. And that buys the rebellion even more time.
Time. It seems like that's the most precious resource in this whole scenario.
Absolutely. Every minute they could delay, the authorities' response would have been a victory.
Okay, so instead of trying to hold specific territories like individual plantations, which, let's face it, would have been super difficult to defend.
Especially against a larger, better equipped force.
Right. The analysis suggests a different approach. Find a safe haven, a place that's easy to defend, and use that as a base of operations.
And they even mentioned a specific location, the Great Dismal Swamp.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't geography experts, tell me about this swamp.
Well, it was massive and really dense, difficult terrain, perfect for hiding out in, and really hard for outsiders to navigate.
So like a natural fortress.
Basically. And it had a history already. It was known as a place where runaway slaves would go to try and escape.
Makes sense. So what kind of advantage would a base in the swamp have given the rebellion?
Well, first off, it's a safe place to train new recruits. You could get them familiar with the terrain, teach them how to fight.
And it's a place to regroup after any clashes with the authorities.
Exactly. And more than that, it sets the stage for a different kind of strategy, not about holding territory, but about hit-and-run tactics.
Guerrilla warfare.
Bingo. You use small, mobile units to launch surprise attacks, then you disappear back into the swamp.
Makes it a lot harder for the authorities to track them down.
For sure. And it means the rebels can choose when and where to strike, which is a huge advantage.
That's assuming they can actually survive in the swamp long-term, right?
I mean, it's a harsh environment. But if they can manage it, it could become this symbol of defiance, this stronghold that the authorities couldn't touch.
Really changes the whole picture. But even with a base camp, how do you actually keep a resistance movement going over time?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And the analysis gets into that, too. It talks about strategies for sustained resistance beyond just having a place to hide.
So what are we talking about here?
Well, for one thing, you got to keep the pressure on. You can't just sit in the swamp and wait for the authorities to come to you. You got to go on the offensive.
So more of those guerrilla tactics.
Exactly. But also, you got to target things that will really disrupt the system. Think about attacks on isolated farms, supply lines, maybe even small military outposts.
Makes it way harder for the authorities to just ignore what's happening.
For sure. And if they have to constantly be on the defensive, it stresses their resources thin, wears them down.
And the more successful those attacks are,
the more people might be willing to join the rebellion.
Right, because it starts to look like a real possibility, not just a hopeless cause.
Exactly. And that kind of momentum can be contagious.
So it's not just about military strategy, it's also about
propaganda, winning hearts and minds.
For sure. But the analysis also talks about something else, alliances. And not just with other enslaved people, but
Native American tribes.
That's a really interesting angle. I hadn't really thought about that.
It's a complex one, that's for sure. But think about it, at that time, you had a lot of Native American tribes who had been pushed off their land, had treaties broken.
They had the own reasons to resent the U.S. government.
Exactly. And they knew the land, they had their own ways of fighting, their own supply lines.
Could have been a really valuable partnership for the rebellion.
Potentially, yeah. It would have been risky, obviously, but the potential benefits were huge.
And then there's the whole question of training. I mean, in any long-term conflict, you need to be able to effectively train your fighters.
No doubt. The analysis talks about the importance of establishing some kind of formal military training for the rebels.
But how do you do that when you're operating in secret?
Well, even a place like the Great Dismal Swamp could be used for that. You could set up small, hidden camps where experienced fighters could teach the new recruits the basics.
Teach them how to use weapons, how to move as a unit.
Right, and you could focus specifically on those guerrilla warfare tactics that would be so crucial for their success.
That level of organization, that could make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It turns a group of individuals into a fighting force.
Okay, so we're talking about a larger, better equipped, well-trained, well-organized rebellion. That's a force to be reckoned with, for sure.
No doubt. But even then, let's be real, taking on the entire system of slavery, that's
A monumental task.
an understatement. The analysis also acknowledges that, and it really emphasizes how important external support would have been for the rebellion to succeed in the long run.
Okay, so what kind of external support are we talking about here?
Well, first of all, you have the abolitionist movement in the North. If the rebellion had managed to gain real momentum and hold out for a while, it's pretty likely that the abolitionists would have stepped up their pressure on the federal government.
To do what?
To take action against slavery, obviously. I mean, public opinion in the North was already divided on the issue, but a prolonged rebellion.
That could have tipped the scales.
Exactly.
The analysis also specifically mentions the Haitian Revolution.
Right. And that's not a coincidence. I mean, here you have this successful slave uprising that happened just a few decades earlier.
Talk about a powerful symbol of hope.
Right. And not just symbolic. I mean, imagine if they had been able to establish contact with Haiti.
What, like for weapons and supplies?
Potentially, yeah. Maybe even experienced fighters who could come over and share their knowledge.
That would have been a game changer for the rebellion.
No doubt. But the analysis goes even further and talks about the possibility of international diplomacy.
Okay, now that's getting really interesting. I mean, how would that have even worked?
Well, it's a long shot, for sure. But imagine if the rebellion had been able to establish control over a certain area, even a small one.
And hold it for long enough to create some stability?
Right. Then they could have started reaching out to other countries, particularly those that had already abolished slavery.
Like Great Britain.
Exactly. They could have tried to gain diplomatic recognition, maybe even military aid.
That would have put huge pressure on the U.S. government.
No kidding. It would have made it much harder for them to just crush the rebellion without facing international consequences.
And then there's the economic angle. The analysis mentions the potential impact of the rebellion on the global cotton trade.
Right. And this is a big one. I mean, cotton was the engine of the Southern economy at the time. And the U.S. was a major supplier to the world.
So a disruption in that supply.
That would have had ripple effects all over the globe.
Especially in places like Great Britain, which was heavily reliant on Southern cotton for its textile industry.
Exactly. And that could have led to economic pressure from those countries, maybe even boycotts.
It's amazing to think about how interconnected the world already was back then.
Right. What happens in one place can have huge consequences on the other side of the globe.
For sure. But it's not just about the fighting and the politics, is it? I mean, the analysis you shared, it also talks about the role of women and other non-combatants in all of this.
And that's so important. I mean, resistance movements, they're not just about the people on the front lines.
It takes a village.
Exactly. And in this case, women would have been absolutely essential. Think about it. They could have acted as spies and informants, gathering intel on the movements of the authorities.
That's risky business.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But they would have had access to places and information that the men wouldn't.
Right, because they weren't seen as a threat.
Exactly. And they would have been crucial for providing medical care to the wounded, too.
I mean, think about the conditions they would have been working under.
It wouldn't have been easy. But their resilience, their strength, that would have been just as important as any military victory.
Okay, so we're painting this picture of a rebellion that's much larger, better equipped, strategically savvy, and with support from both inside and outside the South.
It's a very different picture than what actually happened.
And it raises the question, what if it had actually succeeded? How would that have changed the course of American history? The analysis gets us to some potential outcomes.
And they're pretty mind-blowing, honestly.
For sure. One of the more plausible ones seems to be the acceleration of the abolitionist movement. I mean, if you had a successful slave rebellion, that would have been
Earth-shattering. It would have been impossible to ignore.
Right, and it would have galvanized the abolitionists in a way that nothing else could.
They would have had this concrete example of, look, it can be done.
The system is not invincible.
Exactly. And that could have pushed the nation towards a confrontation over slavery much sooner.
Even earlier than the actual Civil War.
Maybe. And maybe even more violent.
Sobering thought. Another outcome that's mentioned is the possibility of a black autonomous region emerging within the U.S.
Right. And this is where things get really interesting, I think. I mean, it seems almost unthinkable now, but
What, like a separate black nation within the U.S.?
it's a radical idea, but the analysis suggests it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility.
And they even draw a parallel to Haiti?
Yeah, which had already established itself as an independent black nation.
So it's not like there was no precedent.
Right. And if the rebellion had been successful and had been able to maintain control over a certain area,
And if they had support from outside, like from Haiti?
it could have happened. It would have faced huge challenges, of course, but it could have created this.
This whole different reality for black people in America.
No doubt. It makes you wonder what the U.S. would look like today.
Yeah, talk about a butterfly effect. And then there's the question of how a successful rebellion in the U.S. would have affected slavery in other parts of the world.
That's huge. I mean, it would have sent shockwaves throughout the Americas,
Every slave owner would have been looking over their shoulder.
right? Because it would have shown that resistance on that scale was possible. It could have inspired other uprisings.
And that could have led to a much earlier collapse of the entire system of slavery.
Potentially, yeah. It's impossible to say for sure, but
The world would be a very different place.
absolutely.
It's amazing to think about how close history might have been to taking a completely different turn. Even though Nat Turner's rebellion ultimately didn't succeed, this deep dive into the what-ifs really shows just how fragile that whole system of slavery really was.
And how powerful the human desire for freedom is.
Exactly. It makes you appreciate those who fought against slavery, even when the odds were stacked against them.
For sure. And it makes you think about the potential for change, even in situations that seem impossible.
Like, what can we learn from this and apply to the challenges we face today?
Right. It's a reminder that even the most entrenched systems can be challenged.
And that even small acts of resistance can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks so much for sharing your analysis and for walking us through all these different possibilities.
It's been a pleasure. And thanks for the thought-provoking questions.
It definitely gives us a lot to think about, that's for sure.
History is full of those moments, where you just wonder, what if?
What if indeed? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.